First question is, what are the barriers for black gay men being able to develop, to maintain, and to sustain healthy relationships? And what part does homophobia and racism play in our ability to evolve as men? So, it's kind of a big question. It's kind of all over the place, and I did that on purpose.
In the context of a society and a world in which white supremacy is the functional form of currency, in a world in which every important decision that is made at a social, organizational, institutional level is made in, regardless of who's in power, regardless of the skin color of who is at the helm, that those decisions are made to benefit the European cultural community and the maintenance of European power. And so one cannot talk about personal responsibility in that context as though one is able to make decisions in the world and have the power to have those decisions maintained. We don't. And that doesn't mean that we can't reach for that and we can't organize for that, but if we don't have that as the foundation of the issue, then we go off and we create solutions that are not realistic. We create solutions that don't take into account the reality that's on the ground, and then we set ourselves up for failure, and then we blame ourselves. And we blame ourselves from a Phil Wilson context. We blame ourselves from a Bill Cosby context. So we engage ourselves in these blaming behaviors without recognizing the larger structural and systemic force. We'll blame Obama about why he isn't doing something as though because he's president, he's actually running something.
Someone had mentioned earlier about, a lot of young people have a sense of entitlement. And there's nothing wrong with having a sense of entitlement when you are entitled. We are entitled to be free. We are entitled to be able to raise our families. We are entitled to be able to love and to be able to speak our minds and to be able to live stress-free. There's accountability for everything. And it's not so much about pointing the finger, but I believe that you just have to put the accountability because everything happens for a reason. Black people may stroke out earlier than every other people. We may have higher blood pressure than every other people. We may have more diabetes and worse eating habits than other people. But why is that? Why is that? Stress is the #1 killer. Not being able to get a job, not being secure in raising your family is a hell of a lot of stress. Yes, that will raise your blood pressure. And when you're born into a life in a society, and I think that the accountability will always be there as long as there are basically people of European descent on this earth because that's who they are. It's like their existence is counterproductive to our growth.
Is it possible that we flow in a pool or a culture that sort of cultivates a certain type of behavior? You could use a lot of words that makes it difficult or challenging for us to just even approach the idea of being in a long-term relationship.
When we, go through different stages of maturity, we want to, just be free. We don't want to be we don't want to be tied down. But as time goes on, and we realize our mortality, and we look around and we might not have the same amount of people, our family, our friends might not be around anymore, that's when that becomes valuable. And unfortunately, sometimes it might be a little too late. Sometimes, because, like you said, we kind of have this kind of bathhouse mentality sometimes within this community. We might not look like we did in that other stage. So it becomes more difficult for us to, find that healthy relationship in that later stage when we now value it.
It was either Joseph Beam or Essex Hemphill who said, black men loving black men is the revolutionary act of the 1980s. Who said that? Who was it? It was Essex. Essex. Black Men Loving Black Men is the revolutionary act of the 1980s. And so if that is the case, if we're going to take that as a premise, then a black man who is loving another black man in a bathhouse is as revolutionary and legitimate as a black man who's loving another black man in the bedroom of their house that they've had for 20 years. That the issue is the loving. And to presuppose that loving can only happen in the confines of a particular marital bed reinforces the heterosexism and the heteronormativity that oppresses all of us regardless of our sexuality. I'm just talking about liberation and empowerment, period. Just liberation and empowerment. And so recognizing if you want to be monogamous, not because that's what you were conditioned to believe is your only possibility, but that you have freely chosen that based upon what you know your options are, what you believe is possible for you, and made a decision that, okay, this is where my spirit is leading me. This is where I want to go.
Dr. Bird, would you sort of identify for us what you would consider, let's just say maybe the top 5 health disparities with a focus on black men, and then, if you would, maybe even narrow that focus to black same-gender loving people.
It all boils down to self-empowerment. I think that'll come out today in general, that each of us was born with incredible power. And because of society, because of media, because of whatever, we've chosen to give our power to other people and to other things. We go to the doctor to make us healthy. We go to church to make ourselves spiritual. We go to other people to supposedly provide for us what was born within us. And because of that, giving up that power, we take onto ourselves negativity, we take onto ourselves things that cause our high blood pressure, that cause us not to eat well, which helps lead to diabetes and obesity, that allows us to take on behaviors that aren't for our own best interest and will make ourselves sicker.
Prescription for the issue of HIV, the solution to the issue of high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiovascular disease among black men, the issue of obesity, maybe what some might consider the lack of motivation.
I work with a lot of HIV positive men and women. I think that the most difficult struggle is in our community to deal with the issues around homophobia and the messages that our churches send out to us, and people staying in the closet with their disease. I've worked with people for 5 or 6 years to get them to finally go home and tell their mother or their sister that they have HIV. And they're under the impression that to share that information is going to give their mother a heart attack, or they're going to be disowned, or they're going to lose the love and support of their families. And I think that for the HIV piece in particular, for all of us as same gender loving men, or the majority of us here are that, to learn to stand up and be true to ourselves.
In terms of prescription that I would give is that you are your own greatest health advocate. That many people come to doctors looking for answers, and we're more consultants than answer givers. We're not the sages. We're human beings with our own struggles and lives, and we come from a certain bent, a certain philosophy. But the fact is that within each and every one of us, we have the answers to so many of the questions that we're coming with. That to the extent to which you take concern in your health, to which you investigate your medications, that you know what you're taking, that you know how it affects your body, when you come to the doctor, come with your own questions. Many people come and, you know, unfortunately, the way healthcare is delivered in the United States is that there's a certain length of time, and we marshal people in, we marshal people out. Okay. So our goal is not to have you, is not to spend a lot of time because we have to get to the next person. So when you come with your agenda, then it's important, because if you don't come with your own agenda, I'm going to get you in and out as fast as I possibly can, because there are 10 other people waiting in the waiting room. When you come to me, though, with your questions, at least for myself, medicine, you know, people have egos, and so sometimes we feel that you're challenging them when you speak to doctors. But the reality is that when you come with your questions, it shows me that you care about yourself. And if you care enough about yourself to ask me questions, then I'm going to care more about you and what you're going through. We make that connection.
Prescription, but there's a caveat to that. There is no magic pill. It's a process. It really is a process. And I'm talking more of a collective type of wellness that includes all the other things that we mentioned here on the panel. The first thing that I would recommend is, and I'm going to use a quote of one of my friends, she says, turn the mirror on thyself. And that is examination, that's self-awareness. Get a lay of the land. You know, what I would say is look within yourself, look within your circumstances, your assets, your liabilities, look within your family, look within your institutions, and then reflect that mirror on the outside world.